What's going on, everybody? My name is Teller, and I'm out in my shop right now. It's kind of blustery and rainy. My shop's got a tin roof, so I apologize right now for the audio. I'm going to be going through how I made this small leather purse in the video today, and I did record that voiceover inside on a real microphone, so the audio isn't going to be like this the whole video, I promise. But this bag's kind of neat. It's super simple. It has a snap button closure. Then you can open it up and you'll find a cell phone pocket, a separate space to keep anything you don't want getting scratched up or getting banged up in with all the rest of your goodies. And then a simple riveted fixed strap to throw over your shoulder. So if you want to see how I made this bag, stick around. This is the right video for you. But if you just want to watch me do it, you don't want my annoying voice kind of plaguing your ears the whole time you're watching it, I'm also uploading a version with no words at all, so you can just kind of hear the sound of leather work with a little bit of relaxing music in the background as well. So if that's more your speed, that's what you're looking for, go ahead and check that video out on my channel as well. All right, enough of me talking now. Next time you hear my voice, it'll be through a real microphone. We'll see you at the end of the video. I started with a plan I just drew up from scratch on a piece of notebook paper. I used numbers and dimensions that I thought would look good, but as the bag started to come together, I was able to make some alterations to make it a little bit better than it would have been had I just stuck with the original plan. I marked all of my outlines with a scratch-all and made all of my cuts with a rotary cutter. I like to punch in these little holes on any 90-degree corners or any really shallow angles just to prevent tearing as the bag gets used and ages down the road. I was able to make most of these cuts with the rotary cutter, but I did have to break out the X-Acto knife to finish some of them off. After that, I needed to skive down some edges. This is going to be the internal pocket for a cell phone, just to keep it separate from the rest of the things in the bag. And since it's going to be on the inside of the bag, I wanted it to have a pretty low profile. By thinning down the edges where I'm going to sew, I'm able to save a little bit of bulk that this pocket would create while still maximizing the internal space in the pocket. I used leather cement where the seam was going to go and just spread it around with my finger. Once the cement was all spread out pretty evenly, I married the two of them up by just lining up their edges and pressing them together. Once the glue had dried, I marked out my stitch line with a compass, and right here I've just got a normal compass that's made for making circles, but it gets the job done just fine. Once I had my stitch line, I was able to bring my pricking irons out and just follow that line. Now, having a pre-drawn line is really helpful for getting a nice even and straight stitch line. Once I punched all the holes for my stitches, it was time to start sewing. So I'm using a pretty standard just saddle stitch here, and you'll see I'm kind of using a little bit of a contrasting thread, sort of a bright orange thread, so that I can show off the stitching just a little bit. After I finished the stitching, I came through with a hammer just to pound those stitches flat, and then finished off the edges with some sandpaper, and then applied a little bit of a product called Tokonol, which is a wax that's used for finishing rough edges of leather. And you can see just with me rubbing it with my finger how much it improves the edge, but using a power drill with a burnishing stick in the collet really takes it up a notch. It makes those edges nice and glossy in a fraction of the time. Then I needed to figure out what the lid or the top of this bag was going to look like. And I wanted to make sure I used the same radius corners for all of the curves in this bag. And that radius corner just happened to be exactly the same as the lid on my Tokonol jar. So that's what I used to trace everything, and that's what the top is going to look like. Now that the internal pocket is finished, I can go ahead and glue that to the main body of the bag. Now you can see this is going to be on the inside of the bag, on the suede side, and then I had to glue the top of the bag to the outside because this is going to be going over, and I'll be able to use the same stitch to hold both the top to the body of the bag and the internal pocket. So I'm going through 3 layers of leather here. Because I'm going through 3 layers of leather, it's really important that I'm able to punch my stitches really deep and all the way through just so that I can get my needles through. Once I had my stitches
poked out, punched out, I could take it over to my really high dollar stitching pony that held it in place and make those stitches. Again, we're just using a standard hand saddle stitch. I put glue on the edges, I roughed them up and then glued them, and then lined them up and folded over the body of the bag. Now once these two edges are stitched, we're going to be able to fold this thing inside out and see what the bag is going to look like. I went ahead and marked my stitch line again so that I would have a really even seam at the sides of the bag, and then it was time once again to sit down, kick back, relax, and do some stitching. Again, I don't have a great stitching pony, so depending on how long the line is I need to stitch, I'll use a cooler, I'll use my vise, or I'll use my legs. Once those two were stitched, then I just have to pinch kind of the mouth of these edges together in order to get the bottom corners of the bag. I glued them, pinched them down with some clamps, punched them out with my pricking irons, and then once again back to stitching. This time I think I'm just holding the bag on my lap. Once I'm done with the stitch line, it's time to trim off those edges, and then I'll use a lighter, which I know a lot of people prefer not to use, but it's kind of nice just to be able to get those things on fire and press them down, make them nice and flat, and finish your stitch that way. After this is the most exciting part of the build for me. This is my favorite part. I think it's something that is really satisfying when you have been able to picture this bag, but finally get to flip it inside out and see what it ends up looking like. Now you can see this thing's pretty small. It's going to hold a phone, it might hold a water, some sunglasses, keys, kind of some of the necessaries, but it's really a fairly medium small purse. Once I have it flipped out, that's always an exciting moment for me. This is what it looks like from the outside. And you can see that inside phone pocket. It's kind of free floating, and you can see how it's held in place by that same stitch line that's holding the lid to the bag as well, that flap that's going to go over the top. Now, we have to hold the flap closed when the bag is being used, so I threw some snaps on in order to make that happen. After that, I needed a long piece of leather to cut out a 48-inch strap, because that's what's going to go over my shoulder. I used just a 48-inch level that I have laying around to mark out my strap, because I've found that it's a really good width for shoulder straps. After I mark it out, I go ahead and cut out the strap. Now on this bag, the strap is not going to be adjustable. It's just going to be a fixed strap, but I went and checked with my wife to make sure that it was going to be a good size for her. She's fairly average size, so I think it would be a pretty good size for most people. After I had my strap, I rounded off the edges. I finished them the same way, kind of burnishing them with Tokonole, and then riveted them to the sides of the bag, and there we have it.
Hey everyone, it's me again. Thank you so much for watching this video. One of the things I love about working with leather is you can kind of get a little bit of a glimpse into the life of the animal. One of my favorite parts about this bag right here is a little scar in the leather that's just right on the front of the bag. I wanted to make sure that was up front and center, kind of line up the front edge of this lid with the scar as well to sort of highlight it. I imagine that this cow probably got caught on a little bit of barbed wire, or maybe tripped and fell into a rock or something. I don't know what it was, but I love this scar. I love when there's kind of unique marks, and every piece of leather work is different. So thanks for checking out this video. Thanks for checking out this bag. Good luck if you go ahead and make your own, and I'll see you at the next video.